The holiday weekend is just hours away and the lakes have never been higher. What does that mean for you and for all the people who plan to be on the water this weekend? We're live in Harrison Township with a special live event. Karen.
All right, Ben. Also, first at 4, a devastating tornado strikes Missouri's state capital in the middle of the night. First responders go door to door checking on residents. We have the latest. A bus stop crash changed her life. This woman delivers a message to the man who was driving drunk before he receives his sentence. Paula.
We've got a live Thursday for you. We're going to take you to the only place in southeastern Michigan where you can see where the grapes are grown, where the wine is processed, and get a wow, really good pour, all from the vantage of a family's front yard. These stories and more are happening right now on Local 4, First at 4.
Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News First at 4 starts now.
Good afternoon, I'm Karen Drew. First at 4, the man who pleaded guilty in a deadly bus stop crash learns his sentence today. Ralph Davis was sentenced to 5 years probation with the first 6 months in the Wayne County Jail. Last September, Davis was driving drunk, drifted into the wrong lane of Dexter Avenue just north of the Davison, and then slammed into a bus stop. One man died. Another man and woman were also hit. Today, the woman who survived the crash and suffered serious brain injury spoke about how life has changed for her.
I am hurt, sad, and emotionally depressed. I just want to tell you, I wish that you have decided to do something else that day besides hurt innocent people.
Davis also addressed the court, apologizing before his sentence was handed down. A family is mourning this afternoon the loss of a father who was killed in an ATV accident. 38-year-old Victor Davis died when he lost control and crashed into a building on Grand River near Burt on the city's west side. Police say speed was a factor in the crash. The accident happened the same day Detroit Police Chief James Craig issued a warning to ATV riders who have been joyriding on Detroit streets. Davis leaves behind a fiance and 5 children. It's a story that broke hearts all across Metro Detroit, the disappearance and death of little NEVEAH Buchanan. We're approaching a big milestone in that unsolved case. Today, Local 4 Sean Lay is speaking with NEVEAH's grandmother.
The feelings here in Monroe are still very raw about the murder of little NEVEAH Buchanan. Friday marks 10 years since the little 5-year-old was abducted from her apartment parking lot. Her body found encased in concrete weeks later. No one has been arrested. We sat down with NEVEAH's grandmother this afternoon for an eye-opening interview.
If Detective Primore sees this, fine, let him see it, because that's the way I feel. I feel Monroe County is not doing their job. And when I talked with the lawyer that I talked with, he said he will go after Monroe and the FBI. That's his exact words he told me.
Because you said 10 years is enough. You want an arrest.
So, yeah, I want the answers.
Much more with NEVEAH's grandmother coming up on Local 4, including the one thing she wants every parent to remember.
All right, thank you, Sean. Take a look at this. We're getting our first look at all of that damage caused by a tornado in Missouri that struck in the middle of the night. The tornado ripped through the state capital of Jefferson City, pulling down power lines and uprooting trees. Devin Skillion in the newsroom with the latest. And Devin, I understand there's some good news in the middle of this disaster.
There actually is, Karen. The good thing is no one was killed by these storms in Jeff City, but residents were shaken up. 20 people injured. First responders have been going door to door trying to make sure that no one is still trapped underneath the rubble. But residents did get the warning of a possible tornado around 11 o'clock Wednesday night. Less than an hour later, the tornado whipped right through the city. 40,000 people live in Jefferson City. People talking, it just seemed to take out everything in its path. People have lost their homes. Government buildings were also damaged because, as Karen mentioned, it's the state capitol. All of the city's firefighters were called in to assist. Storms cut a very deadly path through other parts of the state as well. At least 3 people dead in Golden City, Missouri. That's about 150 miles away. Much of the state coming to grips now with another natural disaster.
Still kind of numb about the whole thing. It happened so quick, and it sounded like a freight train just coming through.
Windows started shaking, felt the house rattling, heard the tree break, and then boom, hear all the cars just crush.
We were very fortunate here in Jeff City last night to to come through this. But the damage is just devastating up here, you know, and we're days to come to get all this fixed.
That's just Missouri. Severe weather continues to impact several other states. We've got growing flood disaster problems going on in Oklahoma. 2 untethered barges in the Arkansas River threatening a dam downriver. 1 town has already had to be evacuated there. So, Karen, much more as we continue to watch the situation in the center of the country coming up here at 5 o'clock. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Devin. Meantime, here at home, we're heading into the first big boating weekend of the summer, this Memorial Day weekend. And this year comes with water levels breaking records, which pose a threat to boaters and those who never go out on the water. Ben Bailey is live on Lake St. Clair this afternoon with your first forecast. He is kicking off 2 hours of special reports. Ben.
Yeah, Karen, we're in uncharted territory out here. The river or the lake levels have never been higher. And of course, with this weekend approaching, a lot of people are holding their breath here along Lake St. Clair, where we are, along Lake Erie and Lake Huron, and we'll talk more about that throughout the rest of this evening. The forecast, though, right now, windy to say the least. Out here where we're at, 80 degrees is what we're looking at, but temperatures are plenty warm all across the area. Some of those wind gusts have topped 30 miles an hour, and you can see they're sustained at 29 at Metro, with those temperatures there in the upper 70s, and we'll look more at your holiday weekend forecast coming up. The first part that we're going to be talking about with these lake levels is how did we get here? It was only about several years ago that we were having woefully low lake levels. Barges and freighters were having trouble navigating the waters, and now we're at record high levels. So how did this happen? Well, a lot of folks are worried about the rain. It's not necessarily that, but it's the snow as well. If you could think of this as snow that has melted, this is what most of the problem is causing. And there was more than enough snow this season. You probably remember these pictures from the UP. Several locations topped 300 inches of snow. And Calumet, Michigan, in the Keweenaw Peninsula, hit a county record of over 360 inches of snow. That's over 30 feet. But it's not just northern Michigan that feeds into the lakes. It's parts of 8 states and a good chunk of Canada that drain into these lakes. So where does that leave us? Lakes Erie and St. Clair are 30 inches above normal, and Lake Huron is not far behind. Regardless of what happens in the next several weeks, the lake's fate is pretty much sealed. The water won't start receding until at least July. So if you think of this as the lake, it doesn't take a lot of wind to start sloshing that water around, and that is exactly what's happening behind us. So coming up tonight at 5 o'clock, we'll talk about this big weekend that's happening on waters all across Michigan. What does this mean, as residents here have been dealing with this for a while, but boaters are going to be handling it for the first time this weekend. At 5:30, we're going to talk about what Harrison Township and communities across Michigan are doing to try to mitigate the flooding even further inland. And at 6 p.m., how homeowners are handling this. Are sandbags enough? Will the water get worse before the summer is over? That's all ahead in the next several hours of news right here on Local 4. Karen?
All right. We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ben. Still ahead, a Help Me Hank consumer alert. Some airbags are doing something they're not supposed to do. There have been injuries, what you need to know right after the break. Also, he was nicknamed the American Taliban. Now he is a free man. The restrictions he's facing and why some people are still concerned that he's been released. Paula.
Well, just in time for National Wine Day, I'm going to show you where you can get your best pour of the weekend. And wait till you see who's behind the bottle.